The First Prophet, a Bishop Files novel by K. Hooper. Starts with the report. The Bishop Files report, September 22nd. To whom it may concern, I address this report as I have done because you and I agreed it would be best that your name not appear in any written form for obvious reasons. Future reports will be submitted in the same format and manner as requested. As a brief preface, I will say that in my routine monitoring of various psychics in this country and elsewhere, active and latent, whom I consider candidates for either the Special Crimes Unit or Haven, I found myself becoming suspicious of certain events. I cannot say it was a situation I immediately understood. My understanding, as these reports will make clear, is ongoing, as I, and others, slowly piece together the disparate bits of information and actions that are clearly a part of what is going on. I will also repeat, as I told you when we met, that I intend to take no one else into my confidence, unless and until it becomes necessary. Until then, only you and Miranda will be privy to the information I am able to collect. I cannot say just why I believe something sinister is going on within and around the largely underground psychic community. It is not a certainty I can attribute to either my or my wife's precognitive abilities. Psychically, we are both blocked whenever we turn our attention toward certain events and actions and people. That alone would have drawn my attention, but there was more, much more. I therefore submit the following narrative, assembled from among those involved in the situation that transpired, and from my own first-hand observations and senses as events unfolded. I have no doubt we are a long way from learning the complete story, but herein, I believe, is a good place to begin these reports, detailing a situation that occurred several months ago, and which I believe may prove to be the catalyst that will begin to unlock at least some of the secrecy surrounding these events. Respectfully submitted, Noah Bishop, Unit Chief, Special Crimes Unit, FBI. Prologue. They moved with the kind of stealth that came of long experience and grim purpose, and they didn't waste emotion or make a sound. They numbered no more than half a dozen, not counting the man who stood back from the isolated cabin they had encircled and watched them. He had extremely well-developed night vision. Through his unobtrusive, almost invisible headset, a whisper reached him. "She's not alone. Brody's with her." He barely hesitated before speaking softly into the microphone. "How long have they been here?" "The vehicle is cold." "Then he's had time to call in reinforcements." "Maybe, but we have lookouts posted, and no one's reported any movement toward this position. We may have hours yet." "And we may not." Duran glanced back over his shoulder at what daylight would have shown was a cliff edge no more than a few feet behind him and a sheer drop to a boulder-littered canyon below. Brody chose well. This is an easily defensible position for him. I don't propose to be trapped here, and dawn is minutes away. I assume Brody is armed. An unamused chuckle came from the headset. "He usually is, to the teeth, and he'll go down fighting to protect this one." "I know." Duran wondered absently whether his lieutenant had reached this conclusion because he knew the fragile young psychic inside the cabin very much resembled another young woman Brody had nearly died trying to protect years before. But the next words he heard through his headset answered that question for him. "She'd be as valuable to him as to us. If we're right about her potential, she's worth 10 times her weight in gold." "Yes, I need to know what's going on inside that cabin. Move closer. Carefully." Not being psychic himself had its drawbacks, Brody knew, like now. How the hell could he tell her she was wrong when he wasn't sure? "I have to try," she insisted, her face too gaunt for a young woman and her eyes far too strained. "You can't." He kept his voice matter-of-fact, having learned at least that psychics as a rule loved a challenge, and young women could rarely resist one. You're exhausted. You haven't slept for 2 days or eaten since yesterday. Besides that, it's new to you, not yet under control." Her soft laugh was hardly a sound. "If I don't at least try, it'll be under their control. They're here, Brody. They're all around us. I can feel them." Brody didn't let her see the chill he felt crawling up and down his spine. "I can hold them off until our people get here. The sun'll be up in less than an hour, and the bastards aren't invisible. Until then, even if they could, they wouldn't bust in with guns blazing, not with you here." She was shaking her head, and her voice shook as well. "No, they want me badly. He wants me badly. They might take the risk of wounding me. I think they might, and they'd kill you for sure, you know that. Listen to me." He held his voice steady, held both her hands tightly, and tried his best to hold her gaze despite the way it darted around in building panic. "The windows are shuttered and, like the door, are made of steel-sheathed solid oak with iron hinges and locks. The walls are 2 feet thick. There's no chimney. This cabin is a fortress. They'd have to take it apart to get to us. That's one of the reasons I picked it." She wasn't listening, wasn't hearing. "I have to try. I have to stop them. What they'll do? You don't understand, Brody, what they'll do to me. You can't understand." "Jill, don't. Don't let them panic you into doing something that could destroy you." She snatched her hands from his grasp and backed away from him. "I'm afraid of them. Don't you know that? Terrified. I know what they'll do if they get me. I know. My dreams have shown me over and over again. They'll hurt me. They'll hurt me in ways you couldn't imagine in your worst nightmares. I won't let them hurt you. You can't stop them, but I can. I know I can." Brody saw her eyes begin to darken and lose focus, saw her entire body tense as she called on all the energy she had left in a desperate attempt to form some kind of weapon that her panic demanded she try to use to save herself. And even with only 5 senses to call his own, Brody had a terrible premonition. "No! Jill, don't!" Duran's headset crackled softly in his ear, and he pulled it off and stared at it. He was granted only that warning and only scant seconds to understand what it portended. For him, it was enough. Without putting the headset back on, he snapped into the microphone, "Remove the headsets now," and dropped his to the ground. Before it had quite touched the pine needles underfoot, the elegant little electronic device emitted an ear-splitting shriek and burst into flames. Duran looked toward the cabin and his men and saw immediately that 2 of them had not been quick enough in obeying orders. One lay about 30 feet from the cabin, stretched out on his back as though napping, but from the neck up was little more than a lump of blackened, smoldering flesh. The other, who had hesitated just that instant too long, was Duran's lieutenant. He had clearly managed to get the headset off quickly enough to prevent the worst from happening, since it burned a foot or so away from him, but not soon enough to save himself completely. He didn't make a sound, but held his head with both hands and rolled around on the ground in a way that told Duran that at the very least his eardrums had certainly been destroyed. The others were rushing to their fallen comrades. Duran didn't move. Instead, he stared at the cabin that was now much more visible in the breaking dawn, and very quietly he murmured, "You shouldn't have done that, Jill." Her body was limp when Brody picked her up and placed her gently on the couch. She was breathing, her eyes were open. When he checked, her pulse was steady, but Jill Harrison was gone, and she was never coming back. Brody had been warned this could happen, but he'd never seen it and hadn't believed it possible, until he knelt there beside the couch in that quiet cabin and looked into eyes so empty, it was like looking into the glassy black eyes of a doll. Still kneeling at her side, he took out his handkerchief and carefully wiped away the trickles of blood from her nose and ears. He folded her hands in a peaceful pose over her stomach. Absently, he brushed a strand of her hair back from the wide, unlined brow. He closed her eyes. Jill Harrison, not dead, but gone. She had been 22. After a long time, Brody got to his feet. He felt stiff and so tired it was beyond exhaustion. He felt old. "Damn them," he said quietly. Duran was the last to leave, remaining there until his dead and wounded men had been taken away by the others. He was about to get into his car when he heard the cabin door open. Brody stood in the doorway. Across the 60 or so feet separating them, through the morning chill, they stared at each other in silence. Though he knew the other man couldn't hear him, Duran said softly, "This time we both lost." Then he got into his car and drove away, leaving behind him a young woman damaged beyond repair and a man who was his mortal enemy.